see if we can pass these around. I should have done it ahead of time. It's from USCCB, put together some handouts on Catholic social teaching, which is a nice thing. Thank you so much for having me, and I really appreciate that you've come out, even though it might snow while we're here. Not every diocese, not every Catholic school in the country has a good relationship. So it's also wonderful that I know you've had Dr. Bridge and Dr. Morgan as well, that we have that type of relationship where the Catholic University and the diocese, comes together for projects. So that's a wonderful thing. It's wonderful to be here because I'm not used to always having students who want to be in class. Usually they have to take my class, and I'm jumping around the room trying to get them excited as they're staring at their laptops and telephones. So nobody here is staring at a laptop, which is already much better. The question of Catholic social teaching is an important and interesting one. And I think it's, as you hear, you're here to learn, but I think you're also here as evangelists. You're to go out into the world and bring this information you're learning with you. And Catholic social teaching is one of those ways in which we connect with the outside world in a very tangible way. And it's something that young people are very open to, I found, right? A lot of the students, if you start talking to them about faith, they just shut down. They don't, you're talking to me about Jesus again, and they think that you're preaching at them, versus Catholic social teaching kind of opens them up a little bit, right? Some of the ways in which we encounter the divine is through truth, goodness, and beauty. When we start with truth first, sometimes we lose people, right? If we start off with, well, this is, let me tell you about the creed, right? Sometimes a little bit of a hard sell when you start with the creed. But when you start with beauty, it opens up a whole new realm, right? You can't walk in this room but be held to a little bit of awe by the beauty of it, right? You can't see that beautiful image of Our Lady and not think, I wonder who that is, right? Even if you were an atheist, you've never seen it before, there's something about beauty that draws you in. There's also something about goodness that draws us in, right? I think there's a lot of that within our culture where maybe you're not interested in the church, but that we have a soup kitchen and that the Catholic Church is the largest private charity in the world, and the amazing work we do around the world might draw some people in, right? Dr. Bridge, who you had a number of weeks ago, does service trips down to Guatemala to go and serve and help people there. Most of the students who are going on these trips are not mass-going devout Catholics praying their rosaries every day. But there's something that's drawing them into this idea of going down to Guatemala and to serve, which is now opening the doors to faith within them, right? So this is a very evangelical topic for you, right? The different 7 elements of Catholic social teaching are in order of importance, but life being one, family, rights and responsibilities, option for the poor, dignity of workers, solidarity and creation. These are very simple things, right? They even have versions of this where 3rd graders could understand this. It's not overly complicated. But I thought, given the limited amount of time, let's go through one of the big documents that I love the most, Rerum Novarum. And we'll see as we go through Rerum Novarum, these elements popping up as loud voices of truth popping out. And again, why Rerum Novarum? One of the things about Rerum Novarum is the first encyclical that's considered part of the Catholic social teaching, back from 1891. With Pope Leo XIII. So I think in some ways he kind of sets the stage for it. Again, there would be about 20 encyclicals if we wanted to go through all of them, but it's a good place to start, I think. It's another reason why it's a good place to start is because I love Leo XIII. So many of our popes are saints. He is one who is not a saint, but he is clearly a saint. He is an amazing Pope, Leo XIII. And here's why I think that, why I like Leo the 13th. He was in the 1800s at a time when people were questioning if Jesus even was a real human being, if he even existed historically. People were doubting everything of faith. And what Leo the 13th did was a bold move. He said, I'm going to bet it all on the fact that this is real. He opened L'école Biblique in the Holy Land to do research and to dig up the dirt and find the archaeological sites of the first century and the Jewish people. Go there and dig it up. He had no idea what was under that dirt. Maybe nothing, right? Maybe what they would find under that dirt would prove everything in the Bible stories was true. Maybe they would dig it up and they'd find nothing. Maybe they'd find evidence that was contrary to the gospel. And he goes, dig it up. Let's dig it up. And what did they find? They found the biblical city of Jerusalem. They found evidence that reaffirmed what it said in the Bible. That was a risky move, but he went for it, right? Because he believed that it was true, right? He also started the Vatican Observatory. If God is the creator of the universe, we can find God everywhere. Let's look, right? Let's find it. He reopened the Academy of the Sciences. He reaffirmed the Academy of the Sciences. If God is the God of the universe, science will point us directly to God, right? And he even opened the Vatican archives for academics to go in and read what had not been available to the public for a very long time. Because he ultimately held this idea that truth does not contradict truth. There's not a religious truth and a truth of the world and a scientific truth. There's only one truth. And if Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life, any truth will point back to Jesus, right? All truth. We don't have to be afraid of truth. A saint for our time, right? He also said we should approach everything in the world, but we should look at it through our own Catholic lens, right? Study philosophy, study law, study everything. But we should look at it with a Thomistic lens. Let's look at it through our language, not the language of Immanuel Kant, not the language of Machiavelli, not the language of all these other people. We have a language. Let's use our language. Let's look at it, right? So again, he's embracing the world. This encyclical is part of that. He's saying we've written on many things throughout our time, right? Faith and reason and about politics and economy. It is time that we write about the working people of the world. It's a time we address them. We don't have an encyclical about them. So he writes Rerum Novarum, which is on new things, which is kind of a nice, funny title, right? He's writing about new things, right? But it's really important because, again, what he's doing is he's on one side looking at the free market capitalists. He's looking at the Lockeans, John Locke, and saying, there's some truth here. They're onto something, the free market capitalists, but not quite, but they're onto something, right? And on the other side, we also have Karl Marx, right? And the whole Marxist movement going on, and he goes, not entirely wrong, but boy, do they have some problems. Right? Not everything, we don't want to go that route, right? And a lot of working people are looking at Karl Marx and saying, maybe communism is the answer. Maybe Karl Marx is the answer. He seems to know what's going on, right? What Pope Leo's doing is he's saying, no, Marx is diagnosing some of the problems correctly, but he doesn't have the right answers. Right? But he's onto something, right? And he's also saying to the free market capitalists, you're onto something, right? And what are we going to do in the church? We're going to bring the two sides together in friendship and dialogue, and we're going to come up with something even better than either one of these theories has to offer. We're going to offer a better third alternative, right? And that's what he tries to do. So let's see, we'll jump right in. He starts off with recognizing that in this time, in the late 1800s, we have gone through now a couple hundred years of revolution. We had the American Revolution. We had Napoleon. We've had revolutions in Italy. There's revolutions everywhere at this point. We're living in a world of revolution. But are we better off after the revolution? Especially the everyday people. Are the everyday people better off after these revolutions, right? And when you look to things like the French Revolution, there's a lot of dead people. A lot of dead everyday people, common people. A lot of dead nuns and priests and people who help the poor, not just the rich, everyday people. Are we better off? Right? Even if we think under James I in England, they kill him. Thomas Hobbes is walking around England and seeing dead bodies in the streets, people hanging from trees, and you go, is this better than under James I? Right? Even right now, when we look in Haiti, right? We can look at Haiti right now. I have friends there, we work on school projects together. Children killed by gangs, lying in the streets dead with dogs eating them. Is this better than what we had, right? Revolution raises people's minds, but it doesn't always lead to peace, right? To think, well, all we need is one more revolution and everything will be great. There will always be one more revolution and there will always be more promises of greatness, but that is not the ideal way. So what Leo is going to propose is an evolution of society, right? Gradual change. We need to improve society, but not with another revolution, right? Revolutions make many promises, but they don't always deliver. They never seem to deliver. He also points out now that the problem at hand is that the capitalist system that's making people very unhappy with the current system of the time is basically turning people into slaves again. Right? You're moving people out of their towns, out of their communities, and you're putting them in factories. They're working sometimes 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, hot conditions, inhumane conditions. This is why Marx is very popular, because people don't like this, right? People don't like working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. And Leo's calling out the industrialists, saying that's not how you treat people either, right? People can't work that much. They shouldn't work that much, right? And he compares it to the old guilds. Anybody remember the guilds, the medieval guilds? Remember that back in the day, school? Right? When you were part of a guild, right? Maybe, or a shoemaking guild, right? You're all bound together as a community of shoemakers. You supported one another. You sold your goods together. Usually you would even have a side altar in the cathedral that you funded as part of your guild, right? There was a spiritual aspect, and all of the shoemakers would have a chaplain, a shoemaker chaplain, right? They'd even have a chaplain for them. And if anybody got sick or their families got sick, they would pitch in and help one another out, right? They made a community of workers through these guilds. What the Industrial Revolution did was it destroyed the guilds, the medieval guilds, the Catholic guilds. Everyone became a cog in a machine. Your job is to work in a box and then die and be buried in a box. You are not important. There is no soul in any of this. Leo is calling this out as unsustainable. When he does this, he almost sounds like a Marxist, right? He almost sounds like a Marxist. But what he challenges us with at the same time is, but don't trust the solution to this Marxism. The solution is not a solution. The solution the Marxist is offering is, give up your house. Give up your family. Give us all of your property. Give us all of your rights, all of your independence. Give us your religion. Give us anything that means anything to you. Just give it to us, and we'll take care of you. He says, don't trust them. This is a violation of God's will, and you're going to be taken for a ride if you think that you're going to hand them everything and they're going to give you a utopia on earth. That's not going to happen, right? He then gets into, and he now sounds like John Locke. the rights of individuals in natural law. He now sounds just like John Locke. John Locke says, people have a right to themselves and to their labor. It's God-given. You have a right to yourself and to your labor. You don't own yourself outright because you belong ultimately to God. Even John Locke said that. You all belong ultimately to God. But the work of your hands is yours. And that's part of natural law. Right? This is John Locke's argument. Leo the 13th, if you put his words next to John Locke's words, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. They're so similar. He agrees. He agrees. People have a right to for work, to feed your family, to take care of your children. And he says, not only for the fruits of your work, but to the land that you are on. Because with that land, you can feed your children and your grandchildren will be able to feed their grandchildren. There is a right to the land that gives stability to people and tranquility to the nations. People don't hate each other if you just can take care of your own farm, support yourself. He thinks this is a natural right. Here's where my students, my male students, really like this, because you don't get this at college typically. He proposes a type of patriarchy, right? That's a bad word nowadays, especially at a college campus, patriarchy. But he proposes a patriarchy. He says, men, you have a responsibility to work and to take care of your wife and to take care of your children. And it's a God-given right. And it's a responsibility. That's your responsibility. To go out and to work and to provide for your family. If the communists tell you to give that up, don't listen to them. That is your God-given responsibility, to take care of your family. The young men of today don't hear that, but they love it. They really are drawn to it, right? The young men in my class, when I tell them, what do you think about this idea that you have a God-given responsibility to be a father and to take care of your family? A lot of them really perk up. They really like the idea that they have a responsibility, right? Your job is to be involved in the life of your children. Be coaches in the Little League, right? Be leaders in your family. Be a leader in church, right? Be a leader, an example of fatherhood to your family, right? It's not in any way abusive, right? This is not saying, well, men, you're the king of the castle, sit on the couch, drink beer, watch TV, right? That's not manliness, right? Manliness, according to Leo, is responsibility. Taking responsibility for yourself, your family, and your community. And it's an act of service. Young men, when they hear that, they kind of perk up. Right? I don't know if you get a sense of that with young people. You get a sense of it? Yeah. There's too much. If you go on TikTok today, you'll find many, many more voices saying men are irrelevant. Right? What do you need? We don't need men. Right? We don't need men. There's one person I saw on there, they put there that said, cis heterosexual men are irrelevant. We don't need heterosexual cis men anymore. We don't need them. Well, imagine being a heterosexual cis young man hearing that you are entirely irrelevant and we don't need you anymore. Not a great message, right? What's a better message? Young men, we want you to man up. We want you to take responsibility. We want you to go out and take care of your family and to be a father, right? And be present in the life of your kids, right? We want you to be a leader in this community, right? It makes you want to stand up straight, right? Hold your head up, right? It's not you shouldn't be embarrassed, right? Be holy. Be virtuous. Be good, right? This really speaks to young people, right? I always feel bad when I give the talk and there's the young women in the room because I think, I don't know. But then when I asked the young women too, what do you think about this? Most of the young women, they would rather be dating a man who wants to be a man. Most young women, do you want to date a guy who just wants to like play video games as an irrelevant? Or do you want a man who wants to go out and work and provide for his family and be active in the life of his children and to be a leader in the community? What young woman doesn't want to marry a guy like that, right? I think, again, in terms of the evangelical message we have to offer, I think Pope Leo is offering us something, right? Because the world is offering us one view of manhood. That's not that positive, right? And Leo is saying, ooh, no, right? I expect more of you, right? I expect more of you, right? I think when you hold people to high standards, they're much more likely to raise up to high standards. If you set very low standards, they're going to meet very low standards, right? So setting up standards is really good, right? I think anyway. He then gets into the, right? Now he just sounds like John Locke, right? Now he's about to go and sound like Karl Marx again, right? He'll say, but in a community, sometimes people just can't take care of themselves. From situations that are out of their control, because of poverty and other issues, they just can't help themselves. If there are people like that, it's the job of the community to kick in and help those people. We aren't, as John Locke thinks, autonomous, self-created beings. We're in a community. We're our brother's keeper, right? We owe it to them to help them out, right? He's sounding a little bit like the Marx. But this is where he stops, right? He gets a little bit there and he pulls back. Here's he pulled back. He goes, but the state should only get involved so far as they can help and then get completely out of there. Help and then get out of the way, right? The last thing you want is the government running your family. Because who should be running the family? The parents, right? The parents should be running the family, not the government, right? When you read the Communist Manifesto, anyone here ever read that awful thing? It's an awful thing. If you ever get a chance, you can read the whole thing in an hour and a half. It is really terrifying. But what he proposes in there, Marx and Engels, is that we should dissolve the family entirely. There should be no longer a family. The government should be your family, right? So we no longer need mothers and fathers. We can make kids in test tubes, right? He didn't say that back in the 1800s, but today a Marxist would. You can make a kid in a test tube. You don't need parents. And it's the government who should raise your children. And you should be forced to send them to state schools where they will be indoctrinated in the messages of the state, right? That's Marx. That's Marx, right? What Leo says is the government should help to the degree that people who are destitute should get the help that they need, right? People should not starve. People should not be destitute. But then once we give them what they need, the government should get out of the way, right? Return the dignity to the family. Yeah. Did you have something, Aramus?
No, it's what's happening now.
That's why it's very useful. I have my students read the Communist Manifesto in class, not because I advise them that it's good, but it's a playbook for modern society. And if you're not aware of it, you think, oh, things are just happening. Oh no, this is a Marxist plan, right? Marxist plan, very clearly, right? Again, why would Marx seem appealing? Because he accurately recognized a lot of the problems of society. Extreme poverty, treating like a cog in the machine. People have no sense of dignity or purpose or meaning or anything, right? If you talk to young people today, they're all anxious. They're all depressed. They're all lacking meaning. Marx appeals to that type of person. He's saying, yeah, and it's not your fault. It's the system's fault, right? It's Coca-Cola's fault. It's Pepsi's fault. It's everyone's fault, right? It's the government's fault, right? So if we just have a revolution and put me in charge, it'll be better. Except you have a revolution, put somebody in charge, and they're worse than the previous guy, right? That's how it goes, right? But what Leo's proposing is not to say, hey, just give up everything and make me in charge, right? He's the Pope. He probably could say that. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. Who should be in charge? The family should be in charge. The family is the body of politic, which is in charge, who's under God, right? But it's the local church of the family, right? That's the most important thing for Pope Leo, right? Because everybody else is saying, give me the power, give me the power, give me the power. If you give me the power, I'll help you. Pope Leo says, I don't want your power, right? So God is the power, right? That's who has the power, not me. Pope's not asking for power. Okay. Again, he talks about, I could go on and on for these forever, but I have to hold myself back, right? Again, he says, you got to be very careful of utopian societies. Anyone who's promising you a utopia, do not believe them. Anyone who promises a utopia. It's terrible. Where he says, to suffer and to endure, therefore, is the lot of humanity. Sounds kind of strange. To suffer and to endure is the lot of humanity. Let them strive as they may, no strength, banishing from human life the ills and troubles which beset it. Saying in life there will always be hardships. Why? The fall, he says. It's the fall. That is the punishment of Adam and Eve's disobedience. You will toil with the land. You do not live in the garden anymore. If somebody is promising you the Garden of Eden, it's probably a snake. Right? God is not offering us the Garden of Eden, right? He's offered us another way of salvation, which is the cross, right? We have the cross, not the garden. If somebody says, oh, forget the cross, here's the garden, don't trust them. It's a snake who's telling you that, right? Don't believe a snake, right? He proposes that anyone who does this, he says, they will delude the people and impose upon them, and their lying promises will only one day bring forth evils worse than the present, which seems to be accurate according to history, right? The people who promise you paradise run the other way, right? Especially, I will give you paradise and it will cost you nothing. Just give me power. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't work that way, right? It doesn't work that way. Here he proposes the role now of the church. And he keeps popping it in throughout, which again, I like it because he doesn't do it all at one time. He kind of pops it in throughout. But he says that one of the great things that we have now is the church. And what is the advantage of a church in a world that's so divided? The church offers soft power. It offers power, but not as the head of the government, not as somebody who can arrest anyone. We don't have an army. We don't have a jail, right? We don't have a Catholic jail in Maine, right? We don't have... What does the church have to offer? We can call people to their better selves, right?
You have like the blueprint, the church has the blueprint, to how a life should be.
Right.
For family, for marriage.
Yeah. Father Seamus, every day, every Sunday, reminding us how we ought to live, right? And in an ideal society, in that pew would be the politician, the factory owner, and the factory workers, right? The whole community would be sitting in those pews, and every time we have Mass, they would be reminded of the words of Christ, right? We'd have our penitential act, right? We'd shake the hand of our neighbor, forgive one another, right? We'd go and share that common Eucharistic meal, right? And we're called to higher things, right? That's the ideal society, right? Where the church helps soften things, right? The church brings us together in a way, not through power, through soft power, right? Through soft power. It's important, right? And I think a lot of the work that we do, the social work that we do within the city, the work of the sisters, the work of the brothers, the work of lay people in the city gives credence that Catholics have a moral voice which should be listened to. Not as a voice of power, but soft power, right? Like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa goes to you and says, hey, I really want you to help me out with something. Who's going to say no to Mother Teresa? Right? Nobody, right? But not because she's powerful and she's holding a gun to you, right? But because she has authenticity and integrity and she's holy and she inspires you to do the things that she's asking you to do. That's the church.
Yeah, through the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's the model of his life and how he lived his life and how all the institutions took part in based on Jesus.
Yeah.
And gave us the good things, the good virtues of that, the good, better part of ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Christ did not get converts by pulling out swords and conquering armies, right? He did it through washing feet, right? But washing feet can be a powerful tool of conversion, right? And that's the job of the church, is to convert the culture, not through power, through soft power, right? Through example, right? To say that it has no power is to say the gospel has no power. The gospel does have power, but not the power of the weapon, right? But the power of truth and goodness and beauty, right? And unity. That's what Pope Leo is proposing for us. He thinks that this will ultimately bring us to harmony, the church, right? Again, he could be practically quoting Ambrose or St. John Chrysostom. He says, first of all, there is no intermediary more powerful than religion. Wherefore, of the church is the interpreter and guardian, and drawing the rich and the working classes together by reminding each of its duties to each other, and especially to the obligations of justice. It's the church that brings together, right? And this Pope Francis has been very good with as well, right? Social friendship is so important, right? Because if we take the free market capitalist approach, and Locke is running with that, right? We can run with that, where it's just me and my power and my money, and who are you to tell me what to do with it on one side. And the other side is, let's just cut their heads off and we'll be in charge, right? Not the best. You don't got two good options here, right? You don't have two good options. Well, what does the church do? It says, hey, Mr. Communist, come to the table, right? Hey, Mr. Businessman, come to the table. Look at each other, right? Learn each other's names, shake each other's hands, right? Pray together, serve together. You're not all that different, right? The church can bring us together in a way that nothing else in our society can. A bowling league is not going to bring you together. Soccer is wonderful. Not going to bring you together like that. That is specifically the role of the church, to bring the body of Christ together in reestablishing that friendship. Right? That is what Leo thinks is the role of the church, right? It only works, though, if people are willing to be part of the church, right? If the Marxists go, I don't want anything to do with that. The capitalist goes, I don't want anything to do with that. What do we do, right? And that's a little bit where we're at now, too, right? If you think of society. How do we bring Jeff Bezos to the table?
Praying for him.
Praying for him, yeah. Praying for him, right? That's, how do you get these people to the table, right? The big tech companies, it's hard, right? Pope Leo then goes into the duties of workers and the duties of capitalists. It would probably be a bit much to go through them one at a time, but essentially, the workers are responsible for showing up, doing their best, being honest. Don't destroy the factory, don't steal. No quiet quitting, right? He doesn't say that, right? But no quiet quitting, right? You can't quiet quit. Why? It loses your own integrity, right? That's a lack of your integrity, that you show up to work, you get paid, and you don't do your work. Lack of integrity. Don't do it. If you're going to do it 100% and do it in love. That's your responsibility.
That will be cheating.
What's that?
That will be cheating. You steal money for not doing your
Yeah, stealing. Yeah, you're not, yeah. If they take advantage of you, God is the judge, right? God is judge. God is king, right? You work with integrity, right? That's what the early Christians did in the first century, right? That's what drew people to Christianity, is that the Christians lived good, holy, peaceful, self-serving, serving lifestyles to people, right? It's not because they were, the richest. It's that they were the most honest, right? That's evangelical as well. He then goes to the duties of the capitalist. You have to give people time off. You can't overwork people. You can't abuse people. You should pay people as good as you possibly can, right? Okay, you can get away with paying people $10 an hour, but you could afford to give people $16 an hour. Why not give them $16 an hour if you can afford it? You should try to treat people as good as you could possibly treat them, not the worst that you could possibly treat them. Not like, how badly can I abuse my employees before they leave, right? That's not how you treat employees, right? It's, what can I possibly do to help my employees, right? To improve the lives of my employees. He says that's a moral responsibility, right? And the time off, he always pushes it too, with time off, almost like when we have Moses and Pharaoh, right? Let my people go, right? That famous line, let my people go. But the whole line is, let my people go so that they may go into the desert and give worship to God, right? Service to God. What is time off for? Not to be playing video games and drinking beer, although it's perfectly fine in moderation, right? But what is it for? It's for proper leisure, right? Worship in honor of God, time for family, right? If your work is getting in the way of your family and in worship of God, your work has gone too far, right? It's gone too far. That's not the purpose of work. Now, this is again where Pope Leo is calling the church to step in. It's our job to shame people. It's our job to shame people. He says to the capitalist who was abusing his workers, that is truly shameful and inhuman. Right? Again, this is soft power, right? If you were to think of things today, and I propose this to the students, I usually get a stir out of them with it. If somebody, bless you, if somebody did terrible things, right? If somebody was a thief, you probably wouldn't be good friends with them. If they were an abusive person, you probably wouldn't be good friends with them, right? Maybe you could be acquaintances, but you wouldn't typically be friends with an abusive person or a thieving person, right? Somebody who's cheating on their wife, that's not a good friend, right? If your friend's cheating on their wife and you're best friends with the person and you just keep going on, that's not good, right? If you love the person, you would shame them. If you love the person, you would tell them, you need to stop acting like that. That's not appropriate. That's not appropriate. You're better than that. How you're acting is shameful. What Leo proposes, we have the same obligation to do that to people who are abusing their employees. What if big company, I won't say names because I don't know these people, but right, big company, right? Big company X. They're abusing their employees. They're underpaying their employees. Multi-billion-dollar company, $100 billion company, and they're abusing their employees. This person should not be invited to the best of meals on the red carpet, on the front of magazines as person of the year. There should be shame. There should be something shameful about what they're doing. But in the ways of the world, today, people with the most money are the most popular. Oh, you're $100 billion here. Have a seat right here, right? Come sit down, right? We're going to honor you because of all your money. Leo's asking us to consider the character of people, right? We don't just honor the rich, right? This is St. John Chrysostom talked about that too. We don't just honor the rich for being rich. We should respect people who are acting respectfully. And if you're not acting appropriately, there should be shame. There should be a level of shame with it. No, it's given a bad term, but we should live virtuously, right? We should. Ultimately, though, he says, we are called to higher things, right? Let's say somebody has more money than you, right? Jeff Bezos has more money than us. Who cares? Ultimately, who cares? You can't take it with you. It doesn't buy happiness. It doesn't buy favor with God. Ultimately, even if he says, I'm going to keep all my money and I'm never going to help anyone, he will be dead. There will be a final judgment. And we should be very afraid of the final judgment. Right? It is easier for a camel to fit through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. It's not saying rich men can't get into heaven. But if you're a rich man, you should be nervous. Right? You're not in a position of power. You're in a position of, you've been warned. Right? You have been given notice. When you get to those pearly gates, you want to say, I know I'm rich, but look at all the people who I helped. Right? Look how good I was to my workers. Look how good I was. Look how much I gave away. Right? Look how generous I was. I'd still end up dying rich, but okay. But look at what I did, right? You don't go to the pearly gates and go, oh yeah, but I made $100 billion. And who did you help? Me. That's a dangerous position to be in, spiritually speaking, right? And again, if you're living in a Christian culture, we all know that, right? We all know it. The factory owner knows it, and we know it, right? So we don't envy the factory worker, right? For Marx envies the factory worker. He wants to be the factory owner, right? He wants to be the factory owner. As a Christian, you want to be skeptical being the factory owner. Right? You do it with moderation and humility, being the factory owner. Because it's a position of service, right? Within the church, all power is linked with responsibility, right? There's no responsibility, there's no power within the church that is free of, there's no power in the church that's free of responsibility, right? The responsibility far outweighs the honor, right? For sure. Okay. Again, it seems like a repetition over and over again, but the poor are loved by God. Again, the idea would be that we should not oppress people and make them poor, but just because you're poor doesn't mean you lack human dignity, right? For Marx, being poor is oppressed. You want the power. You want the money. What it is to be truly human is to be on top. That's Nietzsche. That's Freud, right? It's Marx. You really want to be on top. That's not Christianity, right? Christianity is not about being on top, right? Christ comes born in a manger, not in a palace, right? There's a dignity even of the poor, right? So again, we don't want to make people poor. People shouldn't have to be desperately poor, that's for sure. But there's no shame in being poor, right? There might even be more shame in being greedily rich. Might be shame in that, but there's no shame in being honestly poor, right? Which, again, might not be something we say enough in the world, right? But there's nothing wrong with being poor, right? You don't have more cars, more money, more. Who cares, right? But when you live in a Marxist world, it's all about money. Everything's about money. He also Leo thinks that we have the ability to heal the world. It's the job of the church to heal the world. We can bring about social healing. And here he particularly looks to the religious sisters and brothers and the priests, ones who choose vows of poverty, lives of service, right? No diocesan priests don't have a vow of poverty, but they live a life married to the bride of Christ, in service to the church, in service to their brothers and sisters. It's a sign of contradiction, right? It's a sign of contradiction to Marx. It's a sign of contradiction to Locke. The Mother Teresa's of the world, they bring the powerful to tears, right? They bring the powerful to their knees. not from their power, not from their money, but through their humility, right? That's the call for all of us. It's our decency that calls the powerful to live differently, right? And it's not to beat them down, it's to bring us together, right? Here, I know I'm running a little bit close on time. Give a story. A few years ago, right, we had 2011, Occupy Wall Street, for example. Anybody remember Occupy Wall Street? I know I lived in Providence, Rhode Island. We had a camp downtown, Occupy. A lot of people very upset. They lost their houses. They lost their jobs. We saw the big banks get bailed out, and the everyday people lost their jobs and lost their houses. People are upset. You can see that there is a validity of being upset, right? That's like the Marxists. Properly identified a problem, right? There is a problem with how we were running things. But they came together and they wanted to take down the 1%. We're going to rip them down. We're going to, even, I don't know how much they meant it, but like we're going to behead, right? This is a French Revolution moment, right? We're going to destroy the 1%. It's the 99, right? But they never really said, well, what do you want to do? How do you fix it? No answer. What should we do about it? No answer, right? No real answer, right? I remember being downtown and seeing them all of a sudden they're marching for like pro-choice things. And I'm like, I don't know what you're standing for. I thought you were against the rich and now you're walking with you're holding pro-choice signs marching downtown. I don't know what you want, right? The whole movement dissolved. Didn't really accomplish anything. I joined a group of people out at the Native American protest out in the Dakotas. When the pipeline went in through the Native American land, I went out there with clergy and other people. And I was so impressed by it. And these are Native people they're Native. Most of them are still Christian. Like there's a weird combination between Native and Christianity. There's been a blending, right? This is the land of Nicholas Black Elk, who's kind of merged the two together. Servant to God, Nicholas Black Elk. We would go marching downtown to try to take back part of their land, which was taken illegally. And the white people would all be linked arm in arm, and the Native people would be in the center of the circle, and they'd be singing and praying. And militarized police would come out and confront us with cans of mace about this big. We'd be locked arm in arm. And they would say, we don't cover our face. We don't cover our eyes. We don't cover anything because we're not doing anything illegal. We have nothing to be afraid of. We have nothing to be ashamed of. We're not, no violence, no hatred, right? But scared to death, right? Imagine being locked arm in arm, scared to death like somebody with cans of mace ready to get you. And one of the young men would walk around the circle and he said, give them peaceful eyes. Give them peaceful, loving eyes. Because we were all like terrified, right? Give them loving eyes. Give them loving eyes. Okay. If anybody ever yelled anything at the police too, like, right? Everybody yelled at the police. We don't do that, right? We don't yell. Right? Calming people. Okay, there we are. Trying to breathe. And then they going around. He says, look at the faces of those against us. Look at their faces. Look at their faces. Remember their faces. Tonight we will go back to the sacred fire and we will pray to their ancestors to change their hearts. Oh. The people who are there, who have sprayed Native people in the face with mace, who are just in the water, on public space, without any violence, who got maced in the face. These people might mace you in the face, right? They have done it. And what do? Look at them in the face, remember their face, and pray to the ancestors to pray for them to convert their hearts. In the movement, they prayed before every meal. Every morning they would get on the announcement, they say, Natives, get your pipes. Christians, dust off your Bibles. It's time to pray. We start every day with prayer, right? Start every day with prayer. Every meal, an elder would come out and pray over the food before we would eat. The sacred fire was always running where there was a place to pray. If women wanted to be near the sacred fire, they actually had to put dresses on. Now, this was negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, right? They're putting on dresses over their sweat clothes and whatever. But it was a movement. It was an interesting movement that was spiritual, right? There was a spiritual element of it that I think ties in so well with our understanding of Catholic social teaching, right? If you look at a lot of the social movements today, in the last 10 years, it's spray painting something, it's smashing a window, it's screaming at police officers, it's flipping people off, you're wearing a mask over your face so that you don't get in trouble for your illegal activity. No accountability, no responsibility, and filled with hate. Catholics can't be part of that, right? Catholics can't be part of that type of thing, right? And I know maybe I'll get myself in trouble for saying this, but if I haven't gotten canceled yet, whatever. But if you look at things like I walked even with Black Lives Matter at the beginning, because who wants to see black people attacked, right? Who wants to see? That's awful. People should not be attacked for being black, right? That's not appropriate. But it kind of went a little far, right? It went a little far, but you didn't see faith leaders march in movements like that. Where were the clergy? They didn't want to be part of that. They did want to be part of the movement with Martin Luther King, right? As religious people, we care a lot about justice. We care a lot about our brothers and sisters. We care a lot about racism, right? We're the most diverse organization on the planet Earth, the Catholic Church, right? We care about our brothers and sisters of all races and of all backgrounds. We clearly care, but we can't be part of organizations that are going to do violence and hatred towards your brother and sister, right? That's the revolution of the Marxist. That we can't be part of, the revolution of the Marxist. We change hearts. We love. Right? And if somebody comes against us with violence, we love them anyway, right? That's the cross, right? That's the message. This is what Leo is calling us to, and this was way, 1891. Okay. Towards the end, he starts saying a lot of the stuff he says at the beginning. But I won't go into all the last one. But he thinks that we need to come together, and he really supports labor unions, which is a very progressive thing in 1891, the Pope supporting labor unions. But he thinks that we need to work together. We need to come together. We need to work together. We need to protect one another. And we need the church to be there to help bring us together and to do it. It is better when people voluntarily help to serve the poor than when the government steps in, steals our money, and then does it for us. It's better when we do it voluntarily, right? That's the better approach. Why? Because we can do it with love, right? Who pays their taxes in love, right? You pay your taxes and you go, oh my God, right? When you give in the collection plate at Mass, you go, I'm giving to God, right? Let it be good, right? Let it do good, right? But you're doing it in love, right? Versus paying taxes, right? Not so much. Okay. Well, that's all I have on Rerum Novarum. As you can probably see, right, we're starting off with dignity of the human person, families, rights and responsibilities, care for the poor, the rights of workers, solidarity. The only thing not touched upon in that would be creation. He doesn't get it much into the environment, but again, that's 1891. I'm not sure that they were that concerned about environmental issues in 1981. 1891. Anybody have any questions or comments?